Hey everyone, you're listening to Big Blend Radio, and you just heard Speed of Sound, the very first track on the new album by Brian-Tarquin and Heavy Friends. It is called Brothers in Arms. It features Joe Satriani, who you just heard, members of UFO, Guns N' Roses, Dokken, Coheed Cambria, Armored Saint, and so many more. So very excited to have Brian-Tarquin back on the show. How are you, Brian?
Great. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, it's good because the last time we talked was 3 years ago? I think 3 years ago with Vegas Blue. Was it during the pandemic? Was it
Yeah,
before?
I think it was 2020 that we did it.
2020. So yeah, I can't even remember. It's a blur, But
Yeah, years become more and more a blur, right?
I know, it's crazy. So Vegas Blue, this was like the second album of you doing amazing work and giving back, because that was also after what happened in Vegas with a shooting. And
Yeah.
and prior to that was Wounded Warriors that you did an album for, right? And so this is a three set of goodness.
Yeah, I did. And in between Wounded Warriors and Vegas Blue, I did an album called Guitars for Veterans. So
That's right too. Yes. Yeah.
so for the veteran, kind of the trio, this third one in the line of them, and I really enjoy giving back to the veterans.
Where did it start for you with doing that? I mean, and even the music it's kind of interesting because you do all kinds of music, jazz. You're what, 3-time Emmy Award winner.
Yeah.
You've done so much for TV. I mean, from Seinfeld to CSI, all kinds of things. But in jazz, a lot of jazz, and then here we are going heavy metal. But I always said heavy metal and jazz are connected. They are.
They are. It's very funny you bring that up. It is kind of, jazz was kind of like the revolutionary music of its time, and of course metal is that of, later times. And both, they use really good musicians, really like live instruments, which is, it's true. They're very similar. I started out with jazz because I did instrumental music, and at the time, rock instrumental was kind of taking a back burner to everything. So I went into jazz because really the jazz that they were playing was kind of like, really instrumental adult contemporary jazz. So, and I felt I could relate to that, and I felt like I could compose that. So it is definitely a connection between the jazz and the heavy metal. Completely different styles of music, however, but the same kind of, I think, spirit to them.
Yeah, there's a spirit to it. It's a freedom in a way.
Yes.
There is freedom, yeah, and a jam. You have to have a jam in there.
Right, yeah. Exactly. That's what you need. A lot of improvisation on both.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, if you don't have improv in music, like shoot me, like just put me away. Like I shouldn't say that on a veteran show, but but I mean it. It's like you've got to have that fluidity. And I think when listening to the album, you're doing this amazing work. Not only are you're raising awareness to amazing causes, and I think what Fischer-House with this album, what you're doing for, I want to talk about them too, and have you back on for a Memorial Weekend and do something with them. And any of, to us, I know a lot of veterans, and sometimes they don't actually know about all the programs that are there. Families too. When you're knee deep in stuff, sometimes you don't see everything. And so whatever we can do to let people know and families know and friends know is important. But this is really good, badass music that people need to hear. So it's something to me when I was listening to the album. It's just I hate to use the word curated. You're not a playlist. It is an album that is just really something that you kind of feel like it's, sometimes you're in war, and then there's some calm, and then it's like, okay, some craziness is in there. It feels like a life of a soldier and what they've gone through physically and emotionally at different parts of their service and life, and even maybe coming home.
That's exactly, I'm glad you like it, because that's kind of what I tried to take people on a journey on. with the record. And the whole thing started because my dad was in World War II. He's a veteran from World War II. And then
Wow.
I was in ROTC in college, and even though I didn't stay with it, I always had a huge respect for it. And growing up in New York City in the 70s,
Wait, did you stop because they're going to make you cut your hair? I had to do that.
I actually went to boot camp and everything. They cut my hair and everything, but that was a long time ago. But yeah, it actually, in the 70s, when I saw all the Vietnam veterans and living, so poorly in the city and in the subways and streets, and no one seemed to really relatively care about this. So I thought, musically we could do something towards bring attention to it.
Mm. But what about for them? For our military folks who hear it, to me, there's something even greater on that. I mean, there's the programs and everything, but there's something about veterans and those who are serving now, hearing the music and making that connection with the album. I make the connection because, Nancy and I have lived around the world. We've been through all kinds of things, from hurricanes to bombs to shootings to all kinds of stuff. It sounds weird, but it's true. When you travel, stuff happens, right? But we do military shows every first Monday with author Mike Wardy, is an amazing military historian who's served in the military. He's written 25 books, and it's amazing, like what he's done. And driven tanks. I'm like, dude, seriously, you did the tanks. But we've done all these shows, and we've lived in military communities. We have friends in service, and there is it's a lifestyle that I think sometimes if you're not touched and connected in, we don't understand it as civilians. And that music bridges that gap. And there's songs that kind of get you through war. I remember, and you've got the Purple Heart at the end of the album.
Right, yes.
So I played Purple Haze, and I'm not saying it's like Purple Haze, but there was just something in it just kind of got me. And of course, Purple Heart, is an entirely, it's a badge of honor for someone, and
sure.
I remember we lost, so much in fires as a community in San Diego. We went through these huge fires, a year and a half of things burning down, and 7 evacuations in that time frame, and not just us but our friends, and then getting them clothes, and and I went and do all the photography of burned down homes of our friends for insurance, and then here comes the fights of insurance companies. I watched our little mountain town go down, and I remember we had to evacuate all the way to southern Arizona.
Oh, wow.
To be able that's how far, because California was on fire. Like it was a cedar fire this was way back when. It was the biggest one at the time, and everybody was fleeing. That's how far we went. We had friends and family out there, and we were told our house was burned down, but it wasn't.
Oh,
we come back. No, thankfully, but it was November by the time we got home. We're driving through Cuyamaca National Forest, and like the trees were burned, and you didn't know what was burned, what was not, and it was all misty. And I remember playing Jimi Hendrix, and I have to say, because you look at your jacket, and I remember, and when I listened to Purple Heart, it took me there immediately. That's why I even have smoke in the background. I know it's not military, but military also helped us in so much in what happened with the recovery. But I remember driving through this forest that we had literally just hiked the day we had to evacuate. And there were azaleas blooming. I mean, it's crazy. And I was like, God, it feels like this is the closest I'll understand what Vietnam was like after something had happened. Just driving through there. And then we got to our house. We have, of course, no electricity. And we're freezing our asses off. We're like, what are we going to do? Do we make a fire or not in the wood burning stove? And if we make a fire, are they going to start you know what I mean? It was the craziest of times. But that song, Purple Heart on I don't know, it's everything to me. It is crazy.
Oh, cool. Glad. I did borrow Hendrix vibe from that, in that song.
Yeah, it's got a vibe, but it is your own. And I think that's what's so epic too, because you wrote all of these and
Yes.
put all of this together, right? You produced
Yeah.
it, you did all of this.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
So I'm hoping people that listen and that do serve and their families have that immediate connection like I do. And I'm sure they will. I mean, God, it's such a good album. Holy cow.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. When you wrote it, did you think about the military listening, or were you thinking of just people hearing it in general and raising the cause? Or what were you, as you were putting it together? Because to me, I felt like you're in different paths, like I said in the beginning.
Yeah. The way I kind of started it was, I'd have a envision in my head of like maybe, like with the sound, the speed of sound, I kind of thought, oh, well, here's maybe a desert storm in Iraq and, soldiers trying to get back to safety and that kind of feeling, so when I initially wrote it, I was kind of like looking at it from maybe almost like a soldier's point of view,
right.
How they would feel and how they would kind of get the safety and how all the emotions you would get through there. I when I wrote, like Luxor, that I had the same kind of thing, and that one was like kind of more in the like the Egyptian city of Thebes as a backdrop, and like for this war zone and everything, and some huge battle, and I felt like, sometimes you have to put yourself in that position somehow to channel like what a soldier, what does it feel like, how it go, you kind of get in the zone, and try to feel it out. So it was actually really, kind of like a really cool experience. And of course, you always have the listener in mind at the end to make sure that they're going to understand and feel that journey as well.
And that's what I said about Purple Heart, listening to that, and when we were driving through, and I went, oh my gosh, because of the way the smoke was still there, you didn't know what was on fire, and we'd driven through fire, but it was weird because, was this little fire over here going to start a new one? And yet it was that smoke rising up. And trust me, I know about fire now, but I could like envision people in the forest, like, you know what I mean? Like after a bomb or something had happened. And that's where my mind went, like just theatrically as we were driving through. And yet a million mixed emotions in milliseconds. And I think that's something that's interesting about this album. So you've got these emotions, and then at the same time, it's the millisecond that you're capturing.
That it's interesting because you're trying to capture that exact moment.
Yet heart beating, but then you've got to have the calm. So there's that, because if you're going through any kind of war or battle, you're still going through that in your own person while you're doing it,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because you have to put yourself into a psyche for that whole thing. So it's
wow.
And, put yourself in a zone.
Did you watch any movies to kind of grasp the feeling?
Yeah,
or read books or like.
Anyway, so I kind of like I think at the time I was like watching Apocalypse Now again, and when we were soldiers and some old John.
Oh, when we were soldiers,
and just kind of getting the feel of the way the
All right, you're cutting out there a little bit. So you were talking about watching movies?
Yes, I was Mel Gibson, When We Were Soldiers. I watched that. I watched Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Hamburger Hill. Also,
oh my God, yeah.
All of these really cool films that kind of get you into the vibe. And one of my favorite games to play is Call of Duty anyway. So, I kind of like zone out on that like once a week and on the couch, kind of play it.
You were talking about When We Were Soldiers, and I was telling you about Mike Guardia on our first Monday show. Mike Guardia wrote his biography with him. So there's the biography, and then he wrote he met Hal Moore, And then he's got 3 books out on him now. And we actually went to Hal Moore's museum in Bardstown, Kentucky. We're driving around with a friend of ours who is in tourism. She's like, oh, we're on the whiskey trail, the bourbon trail in Kentucky. We're like, oh, yay. And then Nancy's going, hey, we're on Hal Moore Parkway. Stop the car, call Mike. And literally we went to his house. We didn't go in because it's someone that's living there, his childhood home, and went to this museum that is amazing. And there's Mike's books, and Mike's been on our show for years. I mean, years. And I'm going, Mike, your book's here. He goes, I know. I went there, and so it is amazing. But when we were soldiers, I mean, and we did all these interviews with him on Hal Moore, and we'd never seen the movie until like maybe a year ago. And then I'm watching the movie going, man, Hal Moore was a badass.
Yeah, that's a great movie,
Yeah, I mean, but when it's something based on true story, and when you read his books, I'm like, wow, that's that thing though, that I think that's what's so cool about what you're doing with the music. Are you looking at some point for this to be in movies? Because I know you do so much TV and movie work, that because you have that drama feel. That's why I said it's like you've got this expand, like the sound can expand and slow, yet you have the millisecond going. It's that weird tempo. I don't know how to explain it, but you have that animalistic vibe of what's going on in survival. You're bringing survival to the forefront as a human being. Like when, like anybody could peep out of those bushes at any time and get you, but you're going to have to make that step forward. You've got that battle vibe. So I hope this album goes out into film, because it's there.
I think it would do very well in film. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
that would definitely,
cool.
A very cool place for it.
Yeah, no, I think it would make it for sure. So tell us about your brothers in arms and getting them all in, because the album does not sound like the pandemic Zoom Skype recordings together.
Yeah.
It's got, like, even though it's some hard material, like it's hardcore, it's got a warmth to it that it's like in the drums, and it just feels good.
Yeah, I did this like a proper record. I have a full recording studio, so I recorded this all on analog tape too. And like the drums, the bass, guitars, and I just tried to get everything, like a record. Like it sounds warm, it sounds, I don't like digital. I mean, digital is fine, and I use it as well. I use them together, so that way you get the best of both worlds. And for drums and rock and metal and all of that, I mean, tape loves that. So I think that I used them both. So first I did all that on tape, then I transferred it over to like Logic and Pro Tools. And then, during the pandemic, since everybody was kind of locked down, they would send me their tracks, and I would put them in. And then on the final mix I mixed it down to 1/4-inch tape, and they mastered it right off the tape.
No way.
Yeah.
Like tape.
Tape. Yeah. I did that.
God.
Still use analog tape, and that's I think accounts for a lot of the warmth on the album, because of the like the drums and the bass and all of that, guitars, I put them all on tape, and that makes a big difference, because it does on digital when you do it.
It's the same as photography. The digital photography is so great. You can take 20,000 photos, and half of them are all the same. But then when you look at, photography on film, there's this, I don't know, it's more nature, especially black and white. The black and whites have this whole other like movement and vibe to them, right? And so what I'm wondering is, are we going to run out of tape? Like, I know that's a stupid question, but I don't think it is when I think about it. Are we going to run out of these materials for film and for audio and all of that?
There's a place that still makes audio tape in Europe. And there's one place here, ATR in America, and it's the old MTech that's in Europe that makes it, I think in the Netherlands. So,
that's always Holland doing it, man. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, and yeah, they have their whole vibe going with
Ah,
that.
they know how to roll things. That's what it is. Sorry, that was a bad joke, but they do know how to roll things in the Netherlands.
People make everything, I'm not sure about, how film does, if they're all digital, or they're doing any film that's actually on a, actually using film stock any longer. But back to the black and white is, there's all sorts of shadows and things that come in when you have those old pictures that you can't get digitally. It's almost like it's too clean.
And then you Photoshop it to the point. So it's like Photoshop and Pro Tools, right?
Yeah, right. That's why I like analog, because I don't, you do the performance and you do it and that's it, and you don't have to edit a million things and copy and paste and hit the space bar and all of that. So, I like the real buttons, record, and, rewind, and using tape, and that's your performance, and that's it, And
Now,
so
do you work that way all the time? Or
I
is it
work
specifically for this album?
I work for that when I do records. So when I do, all the albums I do, it's done that way. For film and television, because things change so much and the people want changes and they come back to you, I do that all basically digitally, because it's just easier to recall the songs, and if they did like a certain piece, but they might like that piece somewhere else, then it's just with ease, you do that.
Well, it's changed so much to digital. Like when we talk about digital, going to theaters now, we did an interview at the Galaxy Theater in Tulare, which is a agricultural community outside Sequoia National Park. So we do parks and public lands as one of our main things. That's why we travel full time. And they're like, you've got to go into this Galaxy Theater, and we've been there twice. And the first time you went in, and your seats are moving to the sound of the film. And the screen's huge, and you're vibrating and doing all these cool things. I'm like, well, this sounds good. Give me a glass of wine. This is fantastic. Yeah. But then the second time we went was this audio explosion. Like, all I'm going to say, we're going to have smell-o-vision soon. It's coming. The sound, it wasn't like you're moving your seat to the race car. You're feeling the vibrations of the sound of the soundtrack of the film. And so I was wondering if that changes for you as you write things and scores, or are they just amplifying it? But you sitting in your chair, they're giving you those vibrations. So when so let's go back to the Vietnam scene in the forest, okay, here's all the smoke rising and people maybe, sneaking around. So you could hear that one twig snap, but not just hear it, you feel it like, oh crap, it was my boot that stood on that twig. So I'm wondering how that's got to change for you in production and in writing scores. It's got to be kind of or are they just taking what you've written and amplifying it on their end?
Yeah, they're amplifying it on their end. Plus, as far as the special effects and the twig and sound effects, they put that in post afterwards, and then they audio sweeten the whole thing then. So I and especially if they're doing it in surround sound or something.
Okay. Now, can we talk about the Hounds of Hell on
Sure.
the album? Everybody, again, Brothers in Arms, you got to go get this. So Brian-Tarquin.com is where people can go, right? You can stream it, but we want proceeds to go to Fischer-House, right?
Yeah.
So where's the best place for people to buy the album so that it helps?
They can go to all the DSPs. So they can go to Apple and Napster and all of those. They can download it from Amazon and Apple. There is a physical CD that'll be available on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
And and then of course everybody streams today, so it's a whole different ball game when you're doing this, because you go through all the trouble of getting it to really sound exactly the way you want it, but streaming kind of cuts down the quality of it. So it's a weird thing, but yeah, I
Yep.
guess that's the way people digest music at this point. So
I
nobody
just
really,
want people to listen to the whole album. I
yeah,
understand hearing like when we play, Speed of Sound in the beginning, we're going to play, okay, wait, I know we're going to play the other one, but I had all these other ones. We have to play Kiss My Ex. Just that is, we have to. That's a badass
yeah,
song too. And
that's
it's
fun.
fun to say. But, I love that song. But to me, I just want people to hear the whole thing through. I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, because you put this album together in a sequence. It's kind of like, listening to Pink Floyd, but one song off of like,
You
The Wall.
no,
Yeah,
dude, no,
yeah. Or
no,
Dark Side of the Moon or something. You got to listen to
no.
in sequence.
It's like only watching a clip of a movie and said you've heard the movie or
Yeah,
watched the movie.
yeah,
You
that's
can't just watch one scene or read one chapter of a book.
yeah,
You can't. You've got to read the whole thing, watch the whole thing, listen to the whole thing, and
yeah,
you'll repeat it. I mean, to me, this album, you've got to go from the beginning to the end. That's it. Like it's all kind of this flow. But the Hounds of Hell, like that to me was like one of the most epic songs on the album. Tell us about that, because you have a whole orchestra backing you.
yeah. I was, that's actually one of my favorite songs on the record. So it's
Yeah.
you know, I actually got the Budapest Orchestra to record the strings live. And that was a whole new process for me because I don't really work with orchestras. So I had to get, I had a temp track in there, just a temp string track in there for just to write the song and to base everything around it. And then, I had to get charts done and send it down. And they recorded in Budapest. And when they sent it back, it was just amazing to have all these tracks. I had, like, for instance, I had like this huge Pro Tools session with 100 tracks on it with, first string violins and
Oh my
cellos.
God.
It was crazy. But it was it was very interesting to work that way. And then mixing it was, kind of a challenge because you kind of have to track wrangler, you know what I mean, with everything and make sure what you want up front, what you don't want, but it was really a very cool thing because I really wanted to take somebody on a journey on that one. That one was
Yeah.
kind of based.
I just wish we could play the whole album now. Like I just want to play the whole thing, but it's like because it's true. And imagine when you're saying like 100 tracks, I was working with 10 tracks the other day, and I'm like, crap, which one is this? Like no, I don't want to do this. Somebody else has to do this. This is
Yeah,
too. It's intense to even. You've got to name your files, and then it's like, wait, no, this. Oh, talk about milliseconds. Like
yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing when you fly it in, you got to be absolutely sure, positive, everything lines up. As a guest guitarist on that one, I got this young guy he's a German guitarist named Johannes Weik, and
okay, yeah,
he's from this band called Son of a Bach. It's a hilarious band.
that's funny.
They dress all up like Amadeus basically, and they it's just a trio, and they just rock out. With these stockings and these wigs and, from the from the 17th or the 18th century. It's hilarious. But he's a great guitarist. So I had him on a couple tracks, that one in D-Day too. So I was really happy because, it's funny. I had worked with that song, Hounds of Hell, for a while with the temp tracks in. But then when I brought the real tracks of the orchestra, I was like, wow, this is taking a whole nother level at this point because the strings were so clear and clean and just everything about it was
Man, I love it because it's just the dynamics. I mean, that's the thing I think that's so cool because heavy metal too, and the hard rock, heavy, whatever anybody wants to call things, to me, it's like sometimes you can lose dynamics so quickly in being loud and full of speed.
yeah.
And that's not what music is about. It's about having the dynamics and the feeling and the emotion. And you really brought it in this album. Like to me, that's the thing. That's what I always listen for. Am I going to stick to it? Oh, it's just speed and no, like you've lost the melody.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You got to be careful too with instrumental music because you'll lose people really fast.
Mm-hmm.
If you take too extreme of a view
Oh
on
yeah, I
things.
always forgot. Yeah, too. It's instrumental. Yeah, but to me, it's like you're taking us on, like you said, a journey, and some of it's a roller coaster. Like, holy hell, what just happened? That's awesome. But like, and look at the talent you have on this. So, and you've been working with these guys for a while, like pretty much most of them, right? Joe Satriani. I mean, come on, you've got
Yeah,
some.
great guy. I have a radio show, weekly radio show in Florida on WFIT, and I called Guitar Track. So I interview a lot of guitarists, and that's how Joe and I met, and how we kind of built up a camaraderie. And Joe was great, and
Cool.
he really was, very wonderful and kind to donate his time because of him being so busy and everything. So it's I was really happy with the guests, and what everybody. It was the first time I worked with Vinnie Moore for Kiss My Ex, and that was great. That was a great experience as well. And so it was, and some people that I've worked with before and some new people. So it was actually really good. I always like to try to get new blood on each album. So you don't, kind of use the exact same people, but
No, yeah.
but it was a good one. This one was I'm proud of this one.
Oh, you should be. I think you should be proud of all your music. Do you, when you compose, just going back to the movies and everything, do you see visuals in your head when you're composing? Like, have you ever painted? Because I feel like you could paint.
Yeah, I did paint. My mother was an abstract artist in New York during the
Okay.
50s, and she was, her name was Pema Brown, and she did a lot of modern art, and she was kind of in that circle with Jackson Pollock and everybody
No kidding. That's cool.
out in the village. And so and she had a lot of showings like at the World's Fair in '64, and I think one of her pieces called Ambush in November is hanging in the Presidential Library of John F. Kennedy
Oh, this is
in
so weird.
Boston, in
This is we
Massachusetts. And so I
I was just going to say, it's so weird that you're talking about that, because the interview I just recorded that's airing a couple days before you is on presidential portraits. And one of them is about JFK, painting of JFK, which was done by de Kooning. I was going to say Elaine or Ellen, but it's de Kooning. She was Pollock's wife. And it was an abstract, this painting we were talking about, an abstract of JFK, which I think is, that's a sign of the times, right? That's what we were talking about. It's like, here's all these presidential portraits. Are they regal? Are they oil? Or are they abstract or digital? So that's funny about your mom in that time frame. That's exactly what we were talking about.
how funny. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I used to like to paint, but I knew I couldn't paint. And so I knew that my calling was music and not painting, but I always have paint a picture in my head that I could do, that I really, when I start to compose, I see a scene and everything kind of like coming together and a certain place. And, when I do it, I'm not even conscious that I'm doing it. It's just when I start playing and start composing, it will just pop in my head. Not even trying to think
do you
about
compose on guitar always?
Usually, most of the time, yeah. Most of the time I do. Sometimes on the jazz stuff, I may do it on keyboard, but for the most part, the guitar is where I compose everything.
Sweet. Love what you're doing. I'm so glad you could join us again. And hopefully Memorial Weekend, we're going to be doing some shows, special shows, just talking. But you got to come back for that, right? And
time and days and that we can do it.
Absolutely. Everyone, we're going to be doing that in conjunction with our friends over at the Lion and the Rose Bed and Breakfast. Go to lion-rose.com for them, because what they do is they give away a day for military every Veterans Day, a room for a veterans couple. They bake their soldiers' angels is what they do, where they bake for soldiers, and all these bed and breakfasts. Our friends at Tiffany's Bed and Breakfast, we do a lot with bed and breakfast, but because they're independent and they can do stuff, it's fun being independent. And they bake for soldiers out in the field, and bake and ship them brownies and cookies. And come on, who doesn't want that? You know, when you're out in the field, that's like, or in the sand.
I mean, God, like a treat, you know, to get something from home, and especially like cookies and brownies and things like that.
Yeah, not just like here's a Snickers bar that M&Ms that were made for the military so they wouldn't melt in your pockets.
Right, hey, exactly.
We still love the M&Ms. So we're going to be doing a whole Memorial Day weekend show, just really honoring veterans and those who have served and passed on. So because it is Memorial Day, but we're going to close with Kiss My Axe with Brian and Vinnie Moore. Brian, it is a pleasure to have you back on the show. We'll talk to you again soon. So everyone, Brian-Tarquin is the place to go. Brian-Tarquin.com, is the place to go. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much.